My name is Antonio Bayona. I've been in the business of data for about 12 years, the last 7 of which has been greatly improved by Tableau. I'm currently in charge of analytics, all things data, in fact, for a local software company called LeaseQuery. It's in the accounting space. Kind of the impetus for bringing me in fact, was to build the analytic function of the business. There was no analytic department, there was no data warehouse, no BI tool whatsoever. The whole point was to come in and actually kind of found it and build it up. So what I have for you today really is, it's a little bit of a technical walkthrough. I will show you some specific examples of how I solve particular problems, but I'm also hoping to kind of communicate some of the strategy, some of the approach that has helped make Tableau successful at LeaseQuery, right? So to set this up, a little bit about LeaseQuery itself. This is our founder, George Z. He's an accountant himself. And what he recognized years ago is that lease accounting, I'm going to talk about leases here, I'm talking about corporate leases, like companies that lease buildings and space and equipment and all kinds of stuff, is super cumbersome. It's extremely complicated, and on top of that, there was a lot of regulatory changes coming up that were going to require companies to be in compliance for leases. So he saw it as a business opportunity, develop this software that helps simplify the process. It kind of reminds me of Tableau, right? Just finding better, simpler ways of doing things. Founded the company, and clearly the market responded because we just crossed the line of our 1,000th customer last month, and in fact got the attention of Goldman Sachs, who just invested $40 million in the company. So courtesy of an up-and-coming Tableau tool, maybe some of you have heard of, in version 2020 we're going to have animations. I'm just going to give you a quick time lapse of LeaseQuery growth, okay? So look, what we're looking at here, it'll start to make sense as soon as it fills in. We start with one customer back in 2013 in the retail business. He was in Georgia, and the ambition to conquer this map, right? So let's get things moving here. You can see that trend line start to build going into 2018, and that's when things really started to take off. And diversifying the number of, or the variety of industries of our clients as well. You'll see that map start to fill in. So. And there's a kind of a funny horse race that's going to develop here. If you look at the very top there, banking and manufacturing. They're like neck and neck and neck for a while. Anyone want to take a guess who wins? Oh, good guess. Good guess. Yep. Somewhere around late 2018, manufacturing's ahead, banking's coming up, there we go, and at about late 2018, it just kind of takes over. Still, manufacturing's kind of like number 2, retail's now number 4 overall. And this is about as quick as I could make it go. It's a daily level of detail. This is based on our sales data, and it's just me experimenting with the beta version of Tableau. I find it interesting how that trend line kind of veers up towards Florida. It reminds me of a hurricane track. I used to live in Florida, so that kind of resonates with me. I'm wondering if someone could build something like that in Tableau, like an animation of hurricane tracks. That would be kind of cool, right? When this thing comes out. So we're coming up, almost on 1,000. As of January, you're going to get to see kind of how this thing all breaks down. And in all told, we have about 47 industries. Our clients sit on about 47 different industries. So a lot of ambition still yet to go. Microsoft and Infor partnerships coming up. Big stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what made Tableau a good fit for LeaseQuery. And oops, got ahead of myself there, excuse me. All right, that's supposed to be, there we go. All right, so having acquired all these customers, obviously we want to know everything about them so we can continue to build the business, right? So it's everything across the customer life cycle, marketing, acquisition, what's the sales process look like, customer support, everything. Trouble is, as with almost every organization, the data is everywhere. And prior to all these resources being implemented, it was any question you wanted to answer was like, somebody go pull a spreadsheet for one of these things, try to combine the data, because it didn't always have a unique identifier, and try to get an answer. Well, we've replaced that by some fairly robust ETL processes. We're using some Tableau partners like Fivetran and Snowflake to warehouse the data, and of course our tool of choice for all the analysis, for all the visualization is Tableau. So today, we use Tableau Online very much like as a data mart. All our data sets are in here, they're certified. Any question we want to answer, we can just go to Tableau desktop, connect to the data, do some blending, problem solved. And then of course this host of dashboards. So we have a number, almost 20 total users now, excluding the analytic team, 9 dashboards, 18 views, and really about almost $2 million of value that we've uncovered just through analysis, and helping the business find areas where they could derive a bit more. All right, so enough of that. Let's talk about some specific things that we've done. So this is the very first product that was introduced to LeaseQuery. These aren't our actual numbers. I data scrubbed this, obviously. The idea here was, sales and marketing being the center of gravity always gets the first attention, right? And sales needed a more efficient way to look at their results on a more active basis. I could only get them to whittle things down to about 10 KPIs. Still quite a lot, but obviously too much for any single dashboard. It's going to be too busy. So the scorecard format here works, much better. And there's still a lot of information to be had here. Month-to-date results, year-to-date, and then a 12-month rolling trend. And from a style perspective, what the approach here was, everything you see up top is a kind of a count, a volume, a rate is all in blue, and everything that's financial is in gold. And that was carried forward in all the other resources connected to this. There are about 7 or 8 dashboards in total. This was just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. So that's one case. So what we have here, is, as you can see, is your month-to-date value and your rolling trend. And that's what I'm kind of focused on for the purpose of this demo. First and foremost, let's talk about this trend line and how this was actually done. And there's a couple of different ways to approach this. Some of you who are more advanced in Tableau are probably not going to be impressed by this, but I'm hoping that the rest of you will take something away from it. Fairly simple approach. You drag and drop. In this case, I have like one deals I dragged into rows. I have a continuous monthly trend up at the top this is for the close date of the deal. The deal was closed, and so you end up with your volume. But I only want to see the trailing 12 months excluding the current month. I don't want to have partial data, right? For, in this case, it's through December. I only want to see up to November going back. One way to do that is through filters. So I'm just going to expand this a little bit real quick and type in. So I have this, what's called, I just called it last 12 month filter. I'm going to show you what that looks like real quick if you want to take a screenshot or picture, what have you. Basically combining 2 clauses here. One formula using a date diff that is looking for the last 12 months, and then combining that with an and the second function here is looking for that last month and saying false, right? So true, I want the last 12 months, and false, I don't want the latest one. If I were to remove that last one, see how this works, I get December back, you see? And some people, what they even do is, this is how to combine it into one function. You could split these up, have it as 2 filters and toggle between. Right. The way I just do it the knucklehead way. And I can share a whole list of this after the meeting. I actually prepared a document. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. It has a list of all these examples. So
you're doing a good job when the phones come out.
What's that?
You're doing a good job when the phones come out.
All right. Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for asking. Make sure everybody can zoom in. So that's one approach. Another way to do this, because the consequence of this approach is that when you filter a view, of course, the entire sheet is filtered to just that data. Anything else you drag and drop in there is going to be restricted to whatever you do. But there's a way to make the calculation independent of other things. So this is the exact same result, except that it's embedded in the calculation. So this one deals last 12 months. It's actually a combination of two things. There's this last 12-month calc, which I'm using an if function here to denote, just looking at it, if it's equal to 1, and then I'm summing the 1 count. So let me put that over here so you all can see it. So this is what you'd actually drag and drop into to get the trend line, right? And then what sits on top of that, I'll show you right now, is this last 12-month calc, which is a bit different approach than using the true and false. This is using kind of the index and size values to search for the result. Let me put that over into as well. So the if index here, you're looking at window max for minus 12, and then the last bit, the and, actually just restricts it. So to exclude the current month. So you have that as a 1 or a 0, and then of course this calculation is looking for the 1. And that automatically generates the exact same trend line as a drag and drop feature rather than a filter. Great. So the next challenge here was, how do we best approach month to date, year to date sort of calculations? So once again, first two options are your filter. So here I've just dragged, again, just one deals into the sheet. And I'm using this filter up here, I just call it current month. Let me zoom that in for you. I hate this. And that's how to restrict the value to the current month. So once you have that filter in place, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping value in here, and we'll get that. If I were to remove that, then of course you'd get everything, right? Okay. Now let's look at how to do that in calculation as well. Same approach as with the trend line, where I don't want to filter anything, I just want to be able to drag and drop calculation in there and see what's going on. So, one deals, current month. And this is actually pretty easy to interpret because it's the exact same filter I just used, except it's wrapped in an if. So if it meets that filter criteria, then sum for me the 1 count and what have you. Leave that up. And I should probably explain the concept, max close date here and all that. That is another calculation where it really is just the max of the actual close date value. I'll show you that real quick. nothing too fancy here. Just wrap your date field in a max. All right. Here we got it. So the third and what I found to be the coolest way lately is we've adopted quite a bit of Tableau. We're using Tableau Online, Tableau Desktop Prep, and we bought the data management features, so we're able to publish and schedule prep flows. And I have a lot of automation running on via that. And in exploring prep, figured out that there's actually a way to embed the month-to-date function in a tablet in the prep flow. So you can also drag and drop it from there. So I'll show you how to do that now. So this again using one deal as an example. We're going to get the exact same result, just in a slightly different way. Okay. So there's not a lot going on here for this purpose of the example. I can show you a much more complicated one in a moment, but this is just an extract of the same data you just saw. And what I've done here is you can click on the plus sign. This is the Tableau Prep environment, and for those of you who haven't seen it, just a way to kind of wrangle data, add calculations before it is, right? I added a cleaning step. So you get kind of something like that. You can see there's a create calculated field option up here. And I hope you're ready for this one, because this one is kind of busy. So I have this calculated field now, one deal is current month. And you can see it's a Boolean, it's a true, the result is true and false. And let's take a quick look at what that looks like. And there's a way I can possibly zoom this a little bit. See if I can explain what we're doing here. A little involved. I apologize for all the copying and pasting. See if I can break this down by the ands. So first and foremost, I'm really just I'm looking at it and using a date trunk to look for the month. And this report date custom, what this could represent in the real world is you could use today. This is just looking at the most current actual date today. It says report date there because I'm actually using a custom, I had to kind of engineer a date for this demonstration that could be an engineered report updated date in your flow, right? Whatever the latest information is. Then I'm looking at and, also with date trunk, and I'm looking for the date comparison. And then this final piece here is kind of important if your data goes back more than a year. And this is very rudimentary way to do this, right? It's just looking at whether it's within the last 365 days, so you don't go inadvertently go back and look at last year as well. And that was necessary for this data set. What's cool?
Why did you have to have day and double parentheses, but month and single?
That might be
They're interchangeable in scripture.
yeah, they are. That just might have been, me typing stuff and putting two quotes for whatever reason. Force of habit. Good question, though. All right, so that gives us kind of a true and false result. But what's cool about this, I found, is that when we transfer this to the actual workbook, I'm gonna zoom in here. So there's your true and false result. When I want to put this into a calculation, and that's what I've done here with one deal's current month, I'm going to show you what this looks like. You'll notice that I don't actually have to tell it that it has to equal true. It works almost like an inset out of set. It just knows that everything that is within that set result is true, is only month to date. So all I really had to do was sum if one deal's current month, which is that true false field, then one count, and I get my exact same result by 21. You can do that with year, you can do that with any date range you want. And to kind of prove that, see if I drag that value in here, you'll notice that it just knows that it's only the truths. So super cool, like little quick workaround, and one really big value add from prep as far as I'm concerned. Great. Does anyone need to take any more photos, or need me to back up or anything? Everybody good? All right. So let's move on. Let me actually close this down. And by the way, what you're looking at again are the actual things that are published out there for LeaseQuery. This is one of the very, I think this is the second follow-on to the scorecard, and this solves a particular problem. What you're looking at here is a visualization of the sales pipeline. So all the deals that are actively being worked in our pipeline, when they were created in the bar chart here, how many were created, what the dollar value was, what stage they're in, what have you. It's a complete overview of what's going on in the pipeline. And we're about to transition to Salesforce, but this came from or the data behind this comes from a tool called PipeDrive, which is a legacy of the startup phase of LeaseQuery. It's kind of a low budget tool. And ironically, as a CRM, it just wasn't very good at this, at helping our sales managers explore what was going on. So the design philosophy here as a resource is beyond the visualization. It's kind of a zigzag pattern, the way I expect a user to engage with this, left to right, is our sales director goes in here and says, I want to see deals that are in price negotiation only. I got 14 deals open in that stage. This is a visualization, being a B2B business, of how those deals roll up under industries or roll up to industries. So I see that the way to interpret this is everything in the upper right-hand quadrant is high dollar value. Everything in the lower left is the lower dollar value. So I see I have some big deals in automotive and nonprofit going on. And I have 3 that are going back to September. Maybe they've been in pipeline for a while. Maybe I want to go and follow up with the prospect. So the next question is, who are they? I want to know who they are, because otherwise I can't do anything. But I don't want to have my user have to continue to click around or jump to another view to answer that question. So what I did is, using a parameter feature, I have here the 3 deals by industry. And I see that automotive one is a pretty big one, it's a $30,000 deal. I can just quickly go to this toggle and switch it to the deals, and it swaps out that table to what's underneath that data. And this very top one there is my automotive deal. In the real life published example of this, there's actually also an embedded URL action there. So they'll click on that and it will take them into PipeDrive and open the deal. So they don't even have to go and retype anything. So it's completely interactive, and it again just helps answer the question without having to jump around. So I love doing this. It maximizes the available real estate, right? The use of the available real estate. So how do we do this? Amazingly, it's pretty simple. So I built here my industry table, just list of industries dragged into rows, the measures I want to quantify here and summarize, and then my list of deals separately, same structure. And when you open the dashboard, all you really need to do is drag in a horizontal box here, tile, and then drag. I'm gonna start with industry first, and I'm gonna put deals right next to it. I'm gonna hide, this is an important step here, it's what tends to screw this up, is you gotta hide the, excuse me, hide the title. And now I wanna make sure that the parameter function does what I want it to do. So I've already built the parameter here, just called it list. Just gonna edit this for a moment so you can see what I did. Just go in and pick a string as data type and typed in industry and deals as the two values, and that's your parameter. And now I'm gonna go into industry to the pill here and hit edit filter, and under condition, I'm gonna find that parameter, list equals industry. So that's gonna trigger the industries to populate there as a filter. And since the parameter right now, if I show the control, is set to deals, I basically get nothing, right? But if I flip this to industry, it all comes back. And now we want to do the same thing on the deal side with the reverse condition. And if I go back to the example here, and select fit with, bear with me here a second, put the parameter control in there. And do the same thing to the other table fit with. It just knows that there's a vacant space there. So really the two tables are coexisting in the same box, but as you toggle this, just one kind of takes over for the other. And you can combine this with click action filters and a bunch of different stuff and just jump around. And I actually have one dashboard that has 3 options, just for the sake of convenience.
I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah. And it's one of those little tricks you pick up. It's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? You just kind of like figure things out. All right. So nothing to put on in a PowerPoint there, thankfully, I hope. The next one that I want to kind of draw your attention to, I'm going to back this out to its original state. And I have to give credit to Ryan Sleeper for this one. I borrowed this one from his website. You'll notice in this trend line that some of these values are millions and some are thousands. And normally in Tableau, you're kind of stuck with one or the other. So in this example, for instance, I've tried to format created AR. ARR is annual recurring revenue. That's what we're seeing here. We go to kind of number formats, and I said, you have to pick one of these. And unfortunately, what you end up with, as you can see here, is everything in the millions is now 1,599 thousand, what have you. What we're able to do here, thanks to Ryan, is use this dynamic calculation that knows what the scale of the value isn't just plants that K or the M, depending on where it goes. So I'll show you what that looks like. First and foremost, the calculation. So created ARR looks like that. And I will copy and paste this over for you. All we're really doing here is looking at ARR and using greater than equal to then statements to say, well, if this meets this condition, then divide the number by X amount, right? Millions, thousands, billions, etc. Whatever you need. Paste that over. Get the next one ready. So that's step one. Step two, I want to attach that to how we determine the unit. So I have created AR dynamic unit here, and now I'm taking that created AR value and using also its statement, its else if. I'm saying if it meets, this condition, this scale, then I want to see a B, an M, or a K, or no. And that's how we get our value scale. The next thing you want to do is when you drag both of these into labels, is what I've done here. Just drag them both into labels, and when you edit your label text, you can place them side by side. Just place the numerical feature to the left, and to the left, and the letter to the right. You can insert them this way as well, and that's the result you get. And that will, even when you filter data down, it's looking at whatever that value is, so it's always going to be accurate. And in fact, I use this in the scorecard as well for the same the same reason. So those are the immediate demos I had. I actually signed up for 2 things, and I was able to do 4. Thank you for for being a good audience, and let me know if you have any questions.
Are those parameters stacked on top of each other?
The parameters.
Create 2 of them. Put out the dashboard.
Oh, the dashboard. Excuse me. This.
I know when you have your description, you got the.
Oh, I'm sorry. These here.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
That top right parameter.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just one parameter with two selectable values. Now, let me go back to go back here. So literally just did let's go create parameter. Just call this list 2. And then here to string list, and then I typed in deals. Industry, and so that becomes the value. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
Can you go back to the PowerPoint that had the.
Sure.
Unit and
Will do. Anyone need that one? Oh, did you need, I saw you put your phone on.
After you create parameter and linking them to the sheets, can you do that step again? Like making sure the sheets knows which parameter, like knows when you toggle between it
Sure.
up here and not up here?
I can do that. Just run through it one more time. So I'm just gonna delete everything.
Why did you have to delete the titles before? You said that's a really important step.
I'm gonna show you why right now. Thank you for asking me to repeat it. Let's delete the container. So at this point, just going back to this example, I've already added my filter conditions here to look for whether list is industry or deals, right? And now I just want to build a view. I'm gonna throw that tile in there, throw an industry, and throw in deals. And unfortunately what happens is, even when you do fit with on these, that's kind of a crucial step to make sure that they fill each other in when they disappear. As long as that header is there, it won't compact itself. It will stay in its full size. So it's not until I do this and hide that title that it will do what I'm actually wanting it to do. It's one of those little quirks. This one?
How do you find that would make it work?
Trial and error. So, wait, was he shaking in there? All right. Did that help?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Cool. Right. There's you have to hide, yeah, you have to hide both of them, yeah.
Okay, you didn't hide both.
Yeah, you gotta hide both. That, I was just showing an example, but if you go to parameters here, now it works, right? If I were to put that industry back in there, then industry would stay, yeah, regardless. That was a question.
Yeah, I was just curious how you like prep versus like other cleaning tools.
How
How do you
oh,
like the
good
Tableau
question.
Prep?
Good question, because I'm kind of a veteran of Ultrix as well, and I've been using NIME a lot too. You know, I find it really user friendly. That's one thing that I do like about it, and the fact that it's written and built in the language of Tableau already makes it super easy for someone to just jump into it and learn it and work with it, as opposed to having to learn a whole other way of doing things in an Ultrix or anything like that. The fact that it's also integrated into the entire Tableau suite of tools, and I can publish it and automate the flows within Tableau Online or server, and monitor as well, because it has features that will tell me if a flow failed and alert me, right? The fact that it's all just all connected makes it kind of a no-brainer. And honestly, the cost as well, super cheap compared to anything else. Just to give you an idea, when I started launching this entire effort, the first automation and kind of just the whole end-to-end ETL suite was done for under 5 figures. And even today, we're well under, you know, I can't say the exact number, but it's not, we'll call it 20K. You know, it's not exact, but it's, we're extremely lean for the amount of capability we're able to deliver. And that was a myth busted, by the way, for our management, because everyone in our management, when I came in, thought that Tableau was out of our, like, not out of our reach, because I had a kind of, thankfully, a blank check, but was super expensive. I just thought it wasn't gonna scale well. And it turns out that of the 3 top tools that I vetted, it was the most affordable. So, totally busted that myth.
Well, what did you do, because I'm dealing with right now, like, my company is just now getting into big data and analysis, and so I'm like the only one that really uses Tableau, and so all the people that I present to, like all the dashboards I build and everything, they're all using Tableau Reader. And I just found out, my Tableau rep told me that they could unpackage workbooks, and it turns out they can't unpackage workbooks just with Tableau Reader, and so now I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place where I'm like, oh yeah, you have this great functionality in Tableau, but then you have to go to Excel and find all of your underlying data. So like I'm trying to build vizzes within the vizzes to like have the tables so they can click through it and build that. But I'm wondering if you potentially dealt with the same, because I'm assuming that, I mean, I don't know, maybe you had more power and you just were able to get everyone on Tableau immediately. But
Yeah.
I'm assuming you probably dealt with a similar growing phase, right? Where not everyone had Tableau. And
Well, I was able to size up how many users we needed and was able to lock in the budget I needed to deploy Tableau at scale almost immediately. So I didn't have too much of an issue with that, but I do know exactly what you're talking about, because it happens everywhere. You can't always just say, oh, well, I need X amount of thousands of dollars, so just so 5 people can see something, right? I'm personally not a big fan of Reader. I consider it kind of a little bit of a data security thing to have people emailing things around, and so I like to keep things kind of locked down for that reason. The only workaround that I see, because unfortunately, not unfortunately, but Tableau does a good job of keeping you having to pay for things, right? That's just the name of the game, right? That's how they make money. Is I do use, we're not a Microsoft shop like Microsoft Office. We use Google and Google Sheets, and there are certain things that I will put into Google in a lockdown folder. So you can get a Google Drive folder and select who is able to see what's in there and who's able to even download it or not, or interact with it or edit it. So there are certain things that I will put in there for a broader audience where all they're able to do is open that Google Sheet and see what's in there, right? But I can put multiple tabs with different levels of detail and kind of just get around for small stuff that's distributed. But it originates still from Tableau. You know, I'll have a Tableau Viz or a Tableau Sheet, and I can transplant that to what I need. The other one is embedded analytics, which is where we take a dashboard like this and actually embed it in a web page via HTML. There's a technique for doing that, and that can be interactive. You definitely want to put that in, if you do it, in a place that's also user controlled though, because you don't want anybody to just get that URL and have access to your report.
So is your Google Sheet also dynamic, as well as personalized, is that?
Not necessarily. That's just,
I know you do that with Excel.
yeah, I mean, with, you could do it with, Power Pivot using, SharePoint. If you're a Microsoft shop and you have Microsoft SharePoint, there is kind of a little workaround where you can connect a pivot to a data source and refresh it. Again, it's one of those things where only do it if it's in a user-controlled environment. So I don't always recommend tinkering with it.
Wait, so that's the solution, is Power
Yeah,
Pivot?
it's gotta be locked down.
Connect to the source.
You could.
Same cybersecurity.
And unlike Tableau, you can't, in that scenario, you can't always control whether people can click on that pivot table, right-click and download the data behind it. You can do that. You can right-click on a cell in a pivot table and get to, yeah, in the field in the pivot table, whereas in Tableau Online or server, you can control what that user can do, whether they can just interact or whether they can get to the underlying data. So the user controls are very granular. Great questions, by the way. Thank you.
Wait, so are you saying that Power Pivot is the solution then, to the SharePoint?
No, it's a tool in the toolbox, but it is not. I have used all of these tools. I've used Power BI. I actually came from Power Pivot before we went to Tableau, and I've never gone back. I rarely use Excel. Rarely.
That's a less obvious.
Little, yeah, I guess. Awesome. Well, I know we have some other great presentations coming up, so.